Hi everyone, this short video is a continuation of the last lesson. During the last lesson, I showed you how to create a basic line graph and scatter plot using the desktop version of Excel. However, I understand not everyone has the desktop version of Excel. And what I mean by desktop version is you have the Excel program downloaded onto your computer. And I understand that not everyone does. So if you don't have the desktop version of Excel, you can create a line graph and scatter plot using Google Sheets. So I'm going to show you how to do that using the same data that I used last time. Let's start by creating a line graph with just one line. I'm going to show the population of Guatemalans in California. So I'm going to highlight that information, but I'm also going to highlight the year associated with each data point. So I'm going to highlight both columns. I'll go to Insert, Chart, and I'm going to change the chart type to a line chart. Now, notice the x-axis is labeled, but the x-axis is labeled in a way that's different than the data that I gathered. What happened here is Google Sheets created its own scale based on the information. We don't want to use the scale that Google Sheets created. We want to use the scale that we created ourselves. So we're going to click this button here called Aggregate. Now notice the years are correctly labeled using the format that we put together, in which we had the years jumping by 3 units every single time. Now what we can do is we can change the titles. So to change the titles, we're going to go to Customize, and we'll go to Chart and Axis Titles, and we'll start by changing the chart title. So now my chart title is more specific. It says population of Guatemalans in California. Now let's change the vertical axis title. I don't have to change the horizontal axis title because notice the title is accurate. The title says year for the horizontal axis, and that is the correct title. So I'm just going to change the vertical axis title so that it says population. And now what you can do is, if you would like, you can change the minimum value like I showed you before during the last lesson. So we don't need the minimum value to be 0 because there's a lot of wasted space here. The population of Guatemalans doesn't fall within this range at all. So we can change the minimum value to be 300,000 so that the line graph is zoomed in and we get a better picture of how the line is changing over time. To do that, you're going to go to vertical axis and you're going to enter the minimum value here. So I'm going to enter 300,000. Something else you can do if you would like is you can label the line graph with the specific data points. So in order to do that, you'll have to go to Series and select this option, Data Labels. And notice along the line graph, I'm seeing the specific value at every single point. I'm seeing the value at this point is 318,377. The value at this point is 375,356. Again, you don't have to do that. It depends on how you would like your line graph to look. You can easily click it off if you want, but in this case, I'm just going to leave it on. And this is now our completed line graph. So I'm going to move this over here, make it a little smaller so that we can make space for the next line graph. For the next line graph, we're going to now have two lines. One line representing the population of Guatemalans, another line representing the population of Salvadorans. So to do that, I can highlight all three columns. I'm going to highlight the year column because I do want the year to show up as the horizontal axis. So I'll highlight all three columns and I'll follow the same steps. And notice the two lines show up with a key. So I don't have to change the key because the key is already correctly labeled. The blue line represents Guatemalans, the red line represents Salvadorans. But I am going to click aggregate again because I do want to change the scale for the horizontal axis. And I'm basically going to follow the same steps that I followed before. I'm going to customize the titles. So I'm going to go to customize, chart and axis titles. The vertical title should say population. I don't have to change the horizontal title because it says year already. I'm going to change the chart title. And again, I can change if you would like to. You don't have to, but if you would like your line graph to be more zoomed in, again, you can change the minimum value. So remember to do that. You would go to vertical axis and enter the minimum value. And here in this case, it also looks like the maximum is a little high. You can even change the maximum value if you would like. So we don't have to go all the way up to 800,000. Notice the highest value is 713,703. So if you want, you can change the maximum to 750,000 to get an even better picture of what's happening. And again, if you would like, you can label every single data point. So in order to do that, you'll have to go to series and select this option where it says data labels. For this specific graph, I'm just going to keep that option off so that you can see, so that you can compare the different possibilities for a line graph in Google Sheets. So that line graph is good to go. I'm going to make it smaller and just leave it here. Okay, so finally, let's create a scatter plot using the other set of data, the percentage of Hudson County's Asian population that is Indian. So I'm going to highlight both columns, go to Insert, Chart. This time I'm going to scroll down and select a scatter chart. Now, notice here I'm definitely going to have to change the minimum value for my vertical axis because of the fact that the vertical axis is scaled in a way that's creating so much space that's actually messing up the correlation. As you might remember from the last lesson, this should be creating a linear relationship. So these points should be creating the shape of a line that's going up, but I can't really see that shape because of the scale that's currently in place for the vertical axis. So to better see that shape, I'm definitely going to have to change the minimum value that's shown in the vertical axis. So let's do that first. And oh, another thing to keep in mind, here I'm not going to click aggregate. I don't want to do that because for a scatter plot, it is very important that your your horizontal axis is following a consistent scale, notice that Google Sheets automatically created a scale for us based on the data so that the years are jumping by 2 units. I do want to keep it that way because if I were to click aggregate, then the scale would be incorrect because I'm not jumping by the same amount. It's not consistent. Notice from 9 to 13, that's 4 units. Then from 13 to 14, that's 1 unit. If I leave it that way, that's going to mess up the relationship that I'm trying to find. That's going to mess up me being able to see a linear relationship or an exponential relationship. So for a scatter plot, I'm not going to click on aggregate. I'm going to leave the scale that Google Sheets created for me for the horizontal axes. So let's start by changing the scale of the vertical axes. Remember, to do that, you have to go to Customize, then go down to Vertical Axes and change the minimum value. Here, the lowest percentage is 41.98, so I can change the minimum to be 40. Now I have a much better view of the shape that this scatter plot is creating. And I'm going to change the chart and axes titles as I did before. So I'll start by changing the chart title. You want your chart title to be very specific so that the reader knows exactly what data you're trying to show in the graph. And I actually don't have to change the horizontal and vertical titles because they're accurate. The horizontal title should say years since 2000, and the vertical title should say percentage. So that's good. Okay, so my scatter plot is good to go. And remember I said if you're seeing a linear relationship or an exponential relationship, then you should include the line of best fit and the equation. So to do that on Google Sheets, you're going to go back to series, and there's an option down here for trend line. You're going to click that option, and it shows the line of best fit for you. If you want to change the trend line to be exponential, you can do that here. I'm going to leave it as linear because this specific scatter plot is creating a straight line. But if you notice your scatter plot is creating a curve that's increasing or decreasing, you can change it to exponential. And then to show the equation, you'll go down here where it says label, use equation, and this is my equation. The equation just looks a little different than what we're used to, but that is basically showing that the equation is y equals 0.457x plus 38.1.